They can't tell who's driving it, but there is someone inside.
Marvin Heemeyer, supervillain or town victim? I'm Adam Andrews with Where Are They Now? Let's talk about it. Marvin Heemeyer, born October 28, 1951 in South Dakota, was a welder and automobile muffler repair shop owner who lived in Grand Lake, Colorado. He moved to Grand Lake back in 1991, and the following year, in 1992, the welder purchased 2 acres of land from the Resolution Trust Corporation for $42,000 in order to build a muffler repair shop on the land. Marvin was pretty involved in town politics, making local newspapers initially with his involvement trying to legalize gambling to the town, but it was his later legal disputes that would really matter. Marvin had agreed to sell property he had bought at auction to his neighbor, Cody Doshef, for $250,000. He ended up increasing that price to $375,000, and Heemeyer had also learned of Doshef's plan to build a concrete batch company, Mountain Park Concrete, beside the muffler shop's property, which would block access to Heemeyer's shop. In 2001, the Granby Town Board had approved construction of the concrete plant, and it set Heemeyer off. He petitioned the city to rezone the property to prevent the plant's construction and was rejected multiple times. The legal battle was very public, and Heemeyer ended up unsuccessfully suing the city alongside Doshef. He was also fined about $2,500 for not having a septic tank on the muffler shop property, which also likely added to his anger with his current situation. But by this point, the 50-year-old had enough. A few years before the whole property dispute, Marvin had bought a 49-ton Komatsu D355A bulldozer with the idea of using the machine to create another route to his muffler shop. Instead of doing that and taking the easier way through things, Heemeyer modified his bulldozer into a homemade quote-unquote MK tank. Heemeyer fitted makeshift armor over the cockpit, engine, and some of the tracks of the bulldozer. Armor that was 30 centimeters thick, put together with 5,000 psi quickcrete concrete between thick sheets of tool steel that he had got from an automotive dealer in Denver. This rendered his bulldozer completely bulletproof and extremely resistant to explosives. So he could see where he was driving, Marvin outfitted video cameras to the outside of the armored shell, protected by 3-inch thick shields of clear Lexan plastic that is completely bulletproof. These cameras were linked to 2 monitors inside the cockpit, and nozzles connected to compressed air were added to blow dust and debris away from the camera lenses. Inside the cockpit, he also added fans and an air conditioning unit to keep him cool while he operated the machine. All these customizations are enough to make anyone want to run away in fear, but Heemeyer also added 3 ports to the tank bulldozer hybrid for 3 firearms that all had 1.5-inch thick steel plates sliding windows so that he could see where he was firing. The armor was lowered on top of the bulldozer using a homemade crane in his garage once Heemeyer was ready to make his move, trapping him inside, and authorities believe he had no intention of ever leaving his now infamous killdozer. On June 4th, 2004, Heemeyer took his massive armored bulldozer out through the wall of his shop, destroying parts of the concrete plant next door, and headed off 16 miles or 26 kilometers for Granby. In the town, Heemeyer had targeted buildings belonging to or associated with those who worked against him in his battle against Doshef and the city. He bulldozed the town hall, the office of the town's newspaper that had written stories against him, the house belonging to the former mayor, now inhabited by his widow, a hardware store that was owned by a man Marvin named in his lawsuit, the town library, and several other buildings, resulting in a total of 13 buildings taking damage from the attack. Heemeyer had also knocked out natural gas service to a few of the targeted buildings. He ran over and smashed up a new truck that was purchased by the town's sheriff's department, and he even destroyed parts of a utility service center. From the weapons installed on the monstrosity, Heemeyer opened fire on Cody Doshef, who attempted to stop the killdozer using a scrapper, which was easily pushed aside by Heemeyer. Luckily, none of those shots hit, but he also opened fire on a state trooper, Dave Batur, and a sheriff's sergeant, Rich Garner. He also fired 15 shots at power transformers and propane tanks along the path of his rampage. Officers including local and state patrol and a SWAT team were following closely by the bulldozer, trying to find a way to stop the Goliath. Occasionally shots were fired, but with no effect. They attempted to take down the cameras used by Heemeyer to navigate, but the bulletproof plastic stopped this from happening. An officer also tried dropping a flashbang device down the exhaust of the bulldozer, but it didn't seem to do anything either. killer. Under Sheriff Glenn Trainor had also climbed on top of the killdozer and rode it trying to find an access point, but was eventually forced off as Heemeyer bulldozed another building. The rampage lasted a grand total of 2 hours and 7 minutes, and near the end, local authorities and the Colorado State Patrol were running low on methods of stopping the attack. Fear for civilian lives was of top concern. The governor at the time, Bill Owens, even considered authorizing the National Guard to bring in Apache helicopters or a fire team equipped with anti-tank devices to destroy the bulldozer and bring the attack to an end. But these ideas were not seen through to avoid any extra collateral damage exceeding the damage that Heemeyer had already been causing. Thankfully, these plans were not necessary as, by this point, the bulldozer soon became stuck on the foundations of the Gamble's hardware store that Heemeyer was trying to bulldoze. The engine's radiator had also been damaged and was leaking fluid, causing it to fail. Now, about a minute after this fact, SWAT teams had swarmed around the bulldozer and a single shot was heard coming from the inside of the cockpit, bringing the rampage and Marvin Heemeyer to an end. The 2 hour and 7 minute long rampage resulted in a total of 13 damaged buildings estimated at around $7 million, or about $11 million by today's standard, adjusting for inflation. Despite the damages, luckily not a single civilian or officer lost their life, with the only fatality being Heemeyer himself. This was largely thanks to the use of reverse 911 protocols used to evacuate all of the buildings suspected to be on the warpath targeted by Heemeyer. Police first tried to remove the bulldozer's armor using explosives, but after 3 attempts it was clear it was not possible. So instead they got through the armor using a powerful cutting torch, finally gaining access to and removing Marvin's body in the wee hours of the morning at 2 a.m. on June 5th of 2004, according to Grand County Emergency Management Director Jim Holohan. The town announced on April 19, 2005 that the bulldozer was going to be scrapped, dispersing pieces of it to separate scrapyards over a very wide area in order to prevent people from taking souvenirs. To this day, many people argue over the intentions of Heemeyer and if he intended to hurt anyone on his rampage across the town of Darby. A bakery owner, Ian Doherty, claimed that Marvin went out of his way to not hurt anyone, but others, including the sheriff's department, say that no one being injured was thanks to both good luck and the reverse 911 protocols. Heemeyer did fire on both Cody Dochev and several officers, as well as firing shots at power transformers and propane tanks, which, had those been hit and exploded, would have endangered anyone within a half a mile, including 12 police officers and residents of a seniors complex. On top of those facts, 11 of the 13 buildings hit by the bulldozer were occupied at the time he began his rampage, and the library had a children's program happening at the time that was luckily evacuated. Some people today believe that Heemeyer was a victim of a town government that didn't think twice about hurting a local business, but on the other hand, he initially agreed to sell his land, even leasing his business to a trash company, selling the property months before he even began his rampage. And there is the much more important fact that he could have easily taken the lives of innocent people during his attack if they hadn't got out of the way in time. Investigators found handwritten lists of targets, including the 13 buildings plus a local church that was spared, and the names of all the people who had sided against Heemeyer in past legal disputes involving his land. His notes also stated his motivation for the attack as a way of stopping the construction of the concrete plant, which he didn't actually do. It also included his surprise at never being caught, with Heemeyer writing, quote, "It is interesting to observe that I was never caught. This was a part-time project over a 1.5 year time period, especially with a 2,000-pound lift fully exposed. Somehow, their vision was clouded." He also wrote, quote, "I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things." On top of the writings he left on his walls and around the shop, Marvin Heemeyer also recorded a total of 3 audio tapes, with a total of 6 recordings coming in at 2.5 hours long, explaining all his reasons for the rampage, which were mailed to his brother living in South Dakota just a little bit before he got into his KT tank. The tapes were then turned over to the FBI and then sent to the Grand County Sheriff's Department, and have since been released to the public on August 31st of 2004. In the tapes he explained his motives, but also spoke about God, saying, quote, "God built me for this job," in the first recording. He went on to say, "It was the reason God never gave him a family," saying, quote, "I think God will bless me to get the machine done, to drive it, to do the stuff I have to do. God bless me in advance for the task that I am about to undertake. It is my duty. God has asked me to do this. It's a cross that I'm going to carry, and I'm carrying it in God's name. The whole story of the attack is relayed in a book written by Patrick Brower, an eyewitness and a reporter, titled Killdozer: The True Story of the Colorado Bulldozer Rampage. There is also a 2020 documentary titled Tread that you can now watch on Netflix. It's also very easy to find tons of footage from the rampage online, as many of them are archival news footage. And lastly, there was a 2014 Russian film titled Leviathan that was inspired by the story but doesn't really cover it factually. And there you have it, the story of Marvin Heemeyer, the internet dubbed Killdozer, and his rampage through a quiet town. What did you think? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here at Where Are They Now? I've been your host, Adam Andrews. You can find my Instagram down below, and until next time, stay safe and well informed out there. Thanks for watching.